Thoughts on Hyprland. Okay, so my thoughts on Hyprland are this. I've never used it. However, the developer, I think, has some sensible opinions on window managers and desktop environments. And I made a video on Cosmic Desktop some time ago, which kind of echoed some of the developer of Hyprland's opinions of Cosmic Desktop. But one of the things I didn't like and don't like about Cosmic Desktop is it seems to be one huge PR exercise. And the second thing is, I know this isn't really talking about Hyprland, but anyway. And the second thing is I don't like about it is that somehow people think that having a desktop environment with window management or a tiling window manager installed is somehow desirable. The point with a tiling window manager and a desktop environment is they're not overlapping. Okay, and what I mean by that is if you need to, well, sorry, let me put it another way. Really, you want to be using one or the other. Each of them cancel each other out, and this isn't even trying to make a case for a desktop environment or a window manager in this case, but they're not overlapping. You've got to understand the whole reason of a tiling window manager is because you've got control over window placements and you're using a terminal. And if you're using a terminal, you generally, and I genuinely would advocate this, you do not need icons. Why are you overlapping why are you overlapping two contradicting designs? The desktop environment design contradicts the window manager design, and the window manager design contradicts the desktop environment. One is designed to use icons, use the WIMP stack, as we learned from my video yesterday, and the desktop environment is for the terminal. Yes, I know people have window managers with status bars, but the design of a window manager is to avoid all that bloated visual design software to get you to use your mouse and click on all this stuff. Now, yes, anybody can have their computer however they want to set it up. If they want a desktop environment with a window manager, fine. Or if they want a window manager with a desktop environment, fine. But the two are not overlapping. They contradict each other, as far as I'm concerned. So back to Hyprland. I've never used it, but Hyprland seems to me a perfectly good window manager. What I will say about window managers are that I'm not actually some kind of window manager fanatic or some kind of, let's say, a specific window manager advocate. And the reason I say it is I use i3. i3 just basically works. I'm not actually a huge fan of it. I'd prefer not to use a graphical environment. I prefer to use the TTY, the teletype terminal, with, if I need split tiles, so to speak, I'd use something like GNU Screen. That's my preferred option, but obviously that isn't always realistically possible in the kind of environment of computing that we live in, which requires graphical user interfaces, and therefore if I'm going to use one, I'm going to use a tiling window manager. And Hyprland seems to me perfectly fine. I think it's unbelievably customizable. The one thing I'm not huge on, as you've probably seen from my videos, I don't really care about desktop writing, as it's called, posting pictures, and I like to have absolute control and customization where possible, but it's usually to take things away. Everything to me that isn't what I need, that is superfluous, doesn't stay. Particularly an obvious example of this is window animations or whatever. They're not important to me. They're just a distraction. they're superfluous to my needs. I want to get work done, and to me the aesthetic isn't even minimal or so to speak clean. It's just focus. Okay, focus as in, what am I working on? Can I get to the screen that I need to work on if I'm changing screens? Does this window manager give me shortcuts? Can I, create my own shortcuts? All the usual things you'd expect from a window manager. So the other thing is, sorry, this is again kind of going off Hyprland, but because I don't use Hyprland, I'm giving you some sort of opinion on window managers as well. One of the reasons I use, say, i3 instead of DWM, on the face of it, you would think use DWM because it's, 2,000 lines of code instead of, i3's huge lines of code, binary or whatever. The only reason I use i3 in this sense, because I've used DWM, it's perfectly fine, because I hold the principle that something as important as your desktop environment or your window manager should be a binary that's basically tested from the trusted repositories. I think it's just good practice. And so with DWM, obviously you can see the source code, you can compile it and whatever, that's no problem. But I think it's good practice to have important system, let's say, or important parts of your computer in the main repositories. And if I really wanted to be compiling software, even though obviously it takes, seconds, I'd use something like Gentoo. But so I think it's just good practice. A good practice to have something like i3, even though it's not perfect. But then I'm not even a huge advocate of something, I'm not a huge advocate of something like DWM, even though it's possibly my preferred of the two. But my actual preferred system is the TTY for using it for the desktop, which I've done plenty of videos on. So